This is a story about a woman who gave everything to everyone until a stranger saw what she was carrying and chose to carry it with her. Stay with me.
The day I stopped counting what I was losing, I started losing everything. The day I stopped counting, he showed up. Naomi Carter was standing in the middle of a Savannah, Georgia morning when the call came in that changed the shape of her world. She had been doing what she always did on Saturday mornings, moving through the Forsyth Park Farmers Market with a canvas tote on one arm and her 10-year-old nephew, Deshaun, on the other, because his mama, her sister, Brenda, was back in the hospital, and someone had to be the steady one. Someone always had to be the steady one. For the past 3 years, that someone had been Naomi. She was 38 years old. She ran a small non-profit art center on the east side of the city called Flourish. She carried a natural perfume of paint, ambition, and barely contained exhaustion. And she had not been on a real date in 16 months. She had not taken a full day off in longer than that. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Ms. Carter? Speaking. This is Renner Collections. You have an outstanding balance of $11,200 on the Flourish Art Center commercial lease. Payment is past due by 60 days. If we do not receive a cashier's check or wire transfer by next Friday at 5 p.m., we will begin eviction proceedings. She did not say anything for a second. Deshaun was pointing at a jar of local honey like it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. And she was standing in the golden autumn sunlight of Savannah with this woman's voice in her ear. And all she could think was, not yet, not after everything. I hear you, she said, her voice calm, controlled. I will have it sorted by Thursday. She hung up. She had no idea how she was going to get $11,000 by Thursday. But Deshaun was looking at the honey, and so she bought him the honey. That was Naomi Carter. That was always Naomi Carter. She had no way of knowing that 3 tables down, a man with dark brown eyes and a low-pulled cap had been watching her, had heard just enough, and was already thinking about a situation she had not asked anyone to think about. His name was James Whitfield, not Jimmy, not Jim. James. He had been called that his whole life, and the precision suited him. On paper, on the kind of paper that mattered to financial journalists and real estate publications, James Whitfield was 39 years old, born in Charleston, educated at Duke, and worth somewhere north of $600 million. So he was the founder and chief executive of Whitfield Capital Holdings, a company that had spent the last decade quietly acquiring undervalued properties across the American South and turning them into something livable, something real. But that Saturday morning in Forsyth Park, nobody knew that. He had come to Savannah specifically because nobody knew that. He came twice a year to walk through neighborhoods without a security detail, without a driver, without the weight of being someone. He wore a faded Duke cap, an old flannel, and a pair of jeans that had actual dirt on the knee from where he had crouched down to look at a property foundation on Friday afternoon. He had been married once. Her name was Caroline. They had been together for 6 years and married for 2. And the marriage had ended, not with a dramatic blow-up, but with the quiet, dignified collapse of 2 people who loved each other, but had no idea how to say what they actually needed. Caroline remarried 3 years ago. He had sent flowers. They were fine with each other in the way that only people who have grieved something together can be. But James had not really let himself want anything since then. Not like that. He had thrown himself into work with the focused intensity of a man building something to fill a space he did not want to look at directly. He had come to the farmer's market because he liked the garlic hummus from one of the local vendors. That was the whole plan. Then he noticed Naomi. Not because she was beautiful, though she was, or as with her natural hair pinned up at the sides and her expression that somehow held warmth and weariness at the same time. Not even because of the phone call, though he had caught enough of it to understand the situation. He noticed her because of the moment right after she hung up. Most people in that moment would have looked shaken, or angry, or scared. Naomi Carter looked at the little boy pointing at the honey, and she bought the honey. Her face settled into something that looked like a decision being made in real time. James had spent 15 years reading people across conference tables. He knew resolve when he saw it. He knew the difference between someone who was performing strength and someone who had actually built it. He bought the hummus. He did not approach her, but he did not forget what he had seen either. And he ran into her 40 minutes later at the coffee stand near the park's north fountain. Because Savannah in October is a small enough miracle that things like this happen. She was ordering black coffee. He was behind her. Sorry, did you want to? She had turned to wave him ahead and stopped. No, please. He gestured forward. You were first. She gave him the look that people give strangers they cannot quite place, like she had seen him somewhere and could not figure out where, and then turned back and paid for her coffee. He ordered his. They ended up standing at the same side counter while the vendor worked, and Deshawn immediately broke whatever silence there might have been by asking James if that was a real Duke cap or a fake one. Real, James said. Class of 2008. My aunt went to Spelman, Deshawn said, with the authority of a 10-year-old who has just delivered important information. That is a great school, James said, and he meant it. Naomi looked between them, then at James. Then she smiled, just slightly, just enough, and said, He is not wrong. That was how it started, not with electricity or destiny or anything cinematic, with a kid in a farmer's market talking about college caps. James did not give her his real name right away, not because he was trying to deceive her, or at least that was what he told himself in the days that followed. He told her his name was James, which was true. He told her he was in real estate, which was technically true. He did not tell her the scale of it. He told himself it was because he wanted to be seen as a person first, which was also true. The problem with having the kind of money James had was that it changed the temperature of every room he walked into. People either wanted something from him or they went stiff and careful, the way you do when you become suddenly aware you might be saying the wrong thing. He was tired of being the variable that changed the equation. Naomi did not know any of that. She just knew that the man from the coffee stand had crossed paths with her twice more that afternoon, once near the bookstalls, once near the parking area, and that both times he had not been weird about it, had not pushed, had just said something easy and moved on. The third time she stopped him. Are you following me? She asked. Not accusing, just direct. He laughed, and it was real, surprised out of him. No, I've been doing a walking tour of this neighborhood for about 3 hours. Savannah is laid out like a grid. We keep ending up at the same corners. Fair, she said. Then, because she was tired and her coffee was cold, and something about this man felt unusually uncomplicated. You want to walk one more block? There is a bench near the fountain I like. Deshawn, who had eaten too much kettle corn and declared himself officially finished with the market, flopped onto the bench first and started watching videos on Naomi's phone with the ease of a child who understood his role in social situations. James and Naomi sat on the other half of the bench. She found out he was from Charleston. He found out she had grown up there too, then moved to Atlanta for college, then came back south because her family needed her. She found out he had been married. He found out she had been in a long relationship that ended badly. She said badly in a way that did not invite follow-up, and he respected that. She told him about Flourish, what it was for, the after-school art programs, the community murals, the summer camps that cost nothing, because that was the whole point. "And you run it alone?" he asked. "I have 3 part-time staff and about 40 volunteers who show up when they can." "So kind of. That is a lot to carry." She looked at him sideways, not defensive, just measuring. "Most people say that like it is a problem, like they are waiting for me to say I am drowning so they can feel better about not doing anything similar. I did not mean it that way." "I know," she said, and she did. That was the strange thing, and she could feel the difference. "I am not drowning, I am just tired. What would help? If anything could." She laughed quietly. $11,000 and about 48 uninterrupted hours of sleep. He did not react to the number, just nodded. "In that order?" "Sleep first, actually." They sat there a while longer. Deshawn fell asleep against Naomi's arm, the phone still playing something. James did not try to fill every quiet. She noticed that. When she got up to go, he asked if she would want to have dinner sometime. She looked at him for a moment, then at Deshawn, then back at James. "Give me your number," she said. "I will think about it." He did. She thought about it for exactly 2 days before she texted him. Family, if you have watched this love story to this point, it means you are touched. Leave your thoughts in the comments and hit the subscribe button if you have not yet. Smash the like button now if you found value in this content. It truly helps the Soul and Heart channel grow. Their first dinner was at a place called Old Pink House on Abercorn Street, which Naomi picked because she liked it and was not going to pretend otherwise for the sake of seeming low maintenance. James showed up in a navy blazer and clean jeans, which was the right amount of effort. She wore a rust-colored wrap dress she had bought 2 years ago and only taken out twice. When she walked in and he stood up from the table, she thought, briefly, against her better judgment, that this was the kind of man you had to be careful about. Not careful because he seemed dangerous, careful because he seemed worth it. They talked for 3 hours, or about everything, about nothing. He told her that he found most business conversation deeply boring, but that he did it because the outcomes mattered. She told him that she used to paint, seriously, with gallery shows and everything, and that she had stopped about 4 years ago when everything else got loud. "Do you miss it?" "Every single day, but it will come back, when things settle." "Do things ever settle?" She looked at him over the rim of her wine glass. "You would be surprised what can shift when you stop bracing for the worst." He held her gaze. "I think I needed to hear that." It was not a manufactured moment. It was not the kind of thing either of them planned. But something in the room changed. The way temperature changes when a window opens. And they both felt it, and neither said anything about it, because saying it would have made it smaller. He walked her to her car afterward. The streets of Savannah at 9 p.m. in October are a particular kind of beautiful. Live oaks strung with Spanish moss, gas lamps on the squares, the sound of jazz coming from somewhere a few blocks over. He did not try to kiss her. She thought he might, and she was not entirely sure how she felt about the fact that she would have let him. Instead, he said, "I would like to do this again, if you are open to it." "I am open to it," she said, and that was that. They had dinner twice more over the following 2 weeks. Then a Sunday afternoon walk through Bonaventure Cemetery, which sounds morbid but is actually one of the most peaceful places in the American South. Or then a Saturday morning coffee that stretched into an afternoon, and then into him helping her hang a new mural at Flourish, because he had offered, and she had surprised herself by saying yes. He was good with his hands, she noticed, measured before he drilled. Did not make it strange that she knew what she was doing too. They worked side by side, and she found herself laughing more than she had in years. And then, one Wednesday evening, he kissed her. They were standing outside Flourish after she had locked up, and he had asked something, she could not even remember what, and she had turned to answer, and they were very close. He said, "Can I?" And she said yes, and that was the most honest either of them had been about anything in a long time. It was the kind of kiss that felt like an answer to a question you had stopped asking. She drove home with her heart doing something she did not have the vocabulary for. She sat in her car outside her apartment building for 10 minutes before she went in. She did not know that 3 hours later, her sister Brenda would call her crying about the hospital bills. She did not know that the next morning, a journalist in Charleston would send James a media inquiry asking for comment about his supposed interest in purchasing property on the east side of Savannah, specifically the block where Flourish sat. She did not know any of that yet. Have you ever felt something real with someone and then watched the whole world try to complicate it? Drop a heart emoji below if you know that feeling. It started with a text from her friend Dana. Dana was a journalist, not famous, not in a major market, but thorough, and she cared about Naomi the way old friends do. The text came in on a Thursday morning while Naomi was in the middle of a grant application. "Hey, do you know who James Whitfield actually is? Because I ran the name for something unrelated, and I think your new friend might be James Whitfield of Whitfield Capital, the company that has been buying up East Savannah." Naomi put down her pen. She typed, "What are you talking about?" Dana sent her a link. It was a business journal profile, 8 months old, with a photo of James at some kind of award event. Dressed differently, suit, sharp, but unmistakably him. 640 million in assets, 12 properties acquired in Georgia alone in the last 3 years. The article mentioned in a sidebar that Whitfield Capital was actively exploring expansion in historic Savannah neighborhoods. The block where Flourish was located was in a historic Savannah neighborhood. Naomi sat very still for a while. She thought about how he had shown up at the farmer's market, how he had been doing a walking tour of the neighborhood, how he had offered to help hang the mural and asked such careful, detailed questions about the lease structure, the building's history, the non-profit's finances. How she had answered those questions freely because she had thought he was just interested. Because she had thought he cared. She thought about the phone call he had overheard. $11,000. She thought about the way he had looked at her when she said that. Not reacting, already knowing, and her chest tightened with something between humiliation and grief. She called him. He answered on the second ring, warm as always. "Hey, are you James Whitfield, the property developer?" A pause. "Yes." "And Whitfield Capital is acquiring East Savannah properties." "Naomi, including potentially the block where my building is." Another pause, longer this time. "I should have told you. I know that." "Should have told me," she repeated. Her voice was very even. That was actually worse than if she had been shouting. "I told you everything about Flourish. I told you about the lease. I answered every question you asked me, as if you were just—" She stopped, breathed. "I thought you were interested. In me, not in what I am sitting on." "It is not like that." "Then what is it like?" He tried. He said he had come to Savannah before he met her, that the neighborhood interest was separate, that meeting her had changed everything about how he thought about that block. She could hear that he meant it. She could also hear, underneath it, the full weight of what he had withheld. "I need you to not call me for a while," she said. "Naomi, please." She hung up, sat in her office, surrounded by the paintings her students had made. Deshawn's drawing of a horse, still taped to the wall by the window. Brenda's hospital bracelet from 2 weeks ago, sitting in a small dish on her desk, because she had been carrying it like a talisman. She put her face in her hands. She did not cry. She was too tired to cry. That was almost worse. Have you ever trusted someone completely and then had to question everything? What did you do? Tell us in the comments. James drove back to Charleston the next day. Not running. He just did not have a reason to stay in a city where the person he wanted to see did not want to see him. He went back to his office, sat behind his desk, looked at the Savannah acquisition file that his team had been building for 6 months, and felt, for the first time in his professional life, genuinely sick about what he did for a living. Which was not entirely fair. He built things. He took neighborhoods that were struggling and brought in investment. He had displaced nobody. He had a policy, written, enforced, that any non-profit or community organization in an acquired block got a 5-year lease lock at below-market rates. But Naomi did not know that. And more to the point, he had had every opportunity to tell her. And he had not. Not because he had been calculating, he genuinely had not been, not after the first week, but because he had been afraid that she would look at the money and the scale of it and stop seeing him as just James from the farmer's market with dirt on his jeans. He had been protecting himself, and in doing that, he had given her every reason not to trust him. His assistant, Priya, knocked on his office door on the 3rd day. "You look terrible," she said, because Priya had worked for him for 7 years and no longer felt any obligation toward unnecessary gentleness. "Thank you." "Is this about the Savannah situation?" "It is about a person." Priya sat down across from him. She had heard enough about Naomi over the past month, had noted that he had started calling her from personal numbers, not business lines, and that he had rearranged 2 meetings to be back in Savannah on specific weekends, to have a reasonable picture of things. "What did you do?" he told her. "All of it." Priya listened without interrupting. Then she said, "James, the woman runs a non-profit arts center for underserved kids, and she has been personally holding it together for 3 years. She trusted you with the full picture of her situation, and you gave her half of yours." "I know." "You know what the real problem is? You were not protecting yourself from her. You were protecting yourself from having to be fully seen. Because if she saw everything and still walked, that would have hurt in a way you could not manage." He did not answer. "She is not pulling away because you are wealthy. She is pulling away because you made her feel like a subject in a transaction she believed was a relationship." That landed like something physical. "How do I fix it?" "You do not fix it. You show up and you tell the truth. All of it. And then you let her decide." Meanwhile, in Savannah, Naomi was having a different kind of reckoning. Her friend Dana came over on Saturday evening with wine and takeout from their favorite spot, and they sat on Naomi's small back porch and watched the light die over the rooftops and talked about it honestly. "Do you actually think he was using you? Like, deliberately?" Dana asked. Naomi took a long time to answer. "No, I think he was being a coward, which is a different problem." "Does the money bother you?" "The money does not bother me. The hiding it does. Because what does that say about what he thought I was going to do with that information?" Dana nodded slowly. "He thought I would get strange about it," Naomi said. "And maybe I would have. A little. But I would have gotten over it, because I liked him for reasons that had nothing to do with what he owns. And he did not trust me enough to give me that chance." "What are you going to do?" Naomi looked at the lights starting to come on across the city. Savannah at dusk was so beautiful, it sometimes made her chest ache. "I do not know yet," she said. "I am still deciding who I am in this." She stayed up late that night, not thinking about James exactly, thinking about herself, about how many years she had spent being the steady one. For Brenda, for Flourish, for Deshawn, for the 40 kids who showed up every Tuesday and Thursday to make something with their hands. About how long it had been since she had let anyone carry something for her without feeling like she had to account for the weight. About how, when James had said, "What would help?" in Forsyth Park, she had felt something she had not expected, the desperate, exhausted pull of actually wanting to answer honestly. She thought about the kiss outside Flourish, about how he had asked first. She thought about how he had bought her coffee and not made it into anything. She thought about all the things she had watched him do when he thought no one was measuring him. She picked up her phone, put it back down, picked it up again. She did not call him, but she opened her paints for the first time in 4 years, and she sat at her kitchen table and painted until 2 in the morning, and it was the best she had felt in a long time. He drove back to Savannah on a Tuesday. No call ahead, no plan beyond telling the truth and accepting whatever came from it. He went to Flourish first, because that was where she was. He could see her through the front window before he went in, standing at a long table with 4 teenagers, all of them bent over something, her pointing at one of the canvases. She was laughing at something one of the kids said. He stood outside for a moment, not gathering courage exactly, just looking. He went in. She looked up. Her expression moved through 3 or 4 things before settling on something unreadable. "Can I have 20 minutes when you are done?" he asked. She looked at the kids, at him. 30 minutes. Yeah, I need to finish this with them. He waited in the small front room, looking at the student work on the walls. There was a mural in progress near the far window, a Savannah street scene, the moss-draped oaks, a girl reading on a bench in one of the squares. It was extraordinary. He stood in front of it for a long time. When the teenagers left, noisily, she came and stood next to him. "One of my students did that," she said. "She is 13. She is going to be someone. She already is someone." He turned to face her. "You are right. I am sorry. I know what you meant." She looked at him steadily. "Say what you came to say, James." He said it. All of it. His full name, the company, the scale of the holdings, the Savannah acquisition file, the policy his company had for community organizations, the locked leases, as the below-market rates, the fact that Flourish, if the block was acquired, would be protected under that policy for a minimum of 5 years, at a rent she could actually afford. He said that he had been hiding who he was not to mislead her, but because he was frightened. That he had been alone in a way that looked productive for a long time. That she was the first person in years who made him feel like himself. Just himself, not the number attached to his name. And that he had been afraid to risk losing that by handing her the full picture. "I know that is not a good enough reason for what I did," he said. "I am not asking you to excuse it. I am asking for the chance to be honest from here on, however you want that to look." Naomi was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "The lease protection. That is real. Not because of me. It has been company policy since 2019. Ask my legal team. I will have Priya send you the documentation today." She nodded, looked back at the mural. "I have been angry at you. I think I am entitled to that." "You are. And I have also been thinking about why I am angry. The honest answer is that I am angry because I care. If I did not care, it would just be a thing that happened." Something in his chest shifted. "I started painting again," she said. 4 years I did not touch a brush. Last week I painted until 2 in the morning. He did not say anything. He just listened. "I do not know if I am ready to say what that means, but I know that I want the chance to find out." She looked at him directly, not soft, not melting, clear-eyed. "Do not lie to me again, not about anything, not even the small things." "I will not." If you do, I am done. I mean that. I know you do. That is actually one of the things I—" He stopped, smiled just slightly. "I will tell you that part when it is not this weighted." Something in her face eased. Not quite a smile. Close enough. "Go get dinner somewhere," she said. "Come back at 7. I will lock up and we can walk." He went. He was back at 6:55. Do you believe people deserve second chances when they come back with the full truth? Tell us in the comments. We want to hear from you. 14 months later. The thing about Savannah in December is that it does not look like Christmas the way other cities do. There is no snow. There are still leaves on some of the oaks. What there is, instead, is a kind of warm, amber-lit softness that settles over the squares in the evenings, and the smell of praline from the candy shops, and people walking slowly like they have somewhere beautiful to be. Naomi Carter walked into Flourish on a Saturday morning and stopped. The front room had been quietly transformed. The student murals were still on the walls. She would not have stood for anything else. But there were flowers on every surface, and the lights were turned low, and James was standing in the middle of it, looking only slightly less calm than usual. Deshawn was there too, because James had called Brenda, who was doing much better, who had actually laughed out loud when James called, and asked if the boy could be part of it. Deshawn was sitting in the corner holding a small sign that said, "Say yes," in his 10-year-old handwriting, and with a drawing of a horse on it because it was Deshawn. Naomi looked at the sign, looked at James, looked back at the sign. "Deshawn," she said. "He paid me $20, Deshawn said. "That is so much money for a 10-year-old. "I know. I'm saving for a switch." She laughed, full and real, the kind of laugh she had almost forgotten she had. James crossed the room. He was not on one knee yet. He stood in front of her with the same expression he had worn that first morning in Forsyth Park. Careful, honest, not trying to perform anything. "I love you," he said. "I have been working up to saying that in the right moment for about 3 months, and I think I have been overthinking it. I love you. I love that you buy the honey. I love that you painted until 2 in the morning. I love that you told me not to lie to you and meant every word of it. I love that you built something real out of things that kept almost breaking." She was very still. "I love you too," she said. "I have for a while. I was waiting for you to go first." He exhaled, then went to one knee, opened the box. It was a ring with a deep amber stone, topaz, not diamond, that she had in fact pointed to in a jeweler's window in downtown Savannah 3 months ago, saying she had never seen anything like it. He had come back the next day and bought it. She looked at it for a long moment. "James, Naomi, I swear to God if you make me cry in front of Deshawn—" "Just say yes," Deshawn announced from the corner. She looked at the ring, at James, at the room around her, the murals her students made, the lights strung across the ceiling, the city she had chosen and the work she had built, and the man who had walked into her Saturday morning and, eventually, told her the whole truth. "Yes," she said. He slid the ring on her finger, stood up, held her face in both hands the way he did when he meant everything he was about to say. "Thank you for not giving up on this. Thank you for coming back with the full truth." Deshawn threw his sign in the air and cheered. Somewhere outside, the bells of the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist rang the hour, the way they had been doing over Savannah for over 100 years. Naomi Carter, who had spent so long giving pieces of herself away that she had almost forgotten she was whole, stood in the center of the thing she built, with the man who finally saw her fully, and for the first time in a long time, she was not tired. She was home. If this story touched your heart, here is what I need from you. Subscribe to Soul and Heart for emotional love stories every week. Like this video if their journey moved you. Comment below. What was the moment that hit you hardest? Share this story with someone who needs to believe in love again. Here is my question for you. Have you ever let fear stop you from being fully seen by someone who deserved to know you? I read every single comment, remember. The greatest love stories are not the ones that come easy. They are the ones built on truth. Until next time, keep believing.